Last week, House Republicans passed explicitly pro-discrimination legislation that does multiple things. It bans LGBTQ plus clubs from schools, including gay-straight alliances, presumably. It prohibits teachers from even mentioning the existence of trans people, akin to Florida's Don't Say Gay law. And last, but certainly not least, it forces teachers to out trans students to their parents, which of course opens them up to verbal and physical abuse, as well as potential homelessness if their parents reject them. Now, I was outed myself when I was 22 years old, and it was by far and away the most traumatizing thing that has ever happened to me. To this day, I'm still living with a severe panic disorder that I developed because of the mental breakdown I had after I was outed. But as bad as it was for me, it could have been worse. At least I was an adult, so I was able to handle it a little bit better. But if it happened to me when I was a child or a teenager, I genuinely don't know if I would have survived it. So believe me when I say this law potentially subjects young trans people to the cruelest fate that I would not wish on my worst enemy. And it comes at a time when trans people are already being displaced due to fascist policies in red states. The Advocate reports that cities like Seattle are seeing such a large influx of internally displaced trans people that it's becoming a full-blown humanitarian crisis. Some trans refugees have actually ended up in refugee camps on the other side of the globe while they wait for the Netherlands to approve their asylum claims. And the situation has gotten so dire in the U.S. that genocide experts at the Lemkin Institute are sounding the alarm about how the U.S. is in the early stages of a literal trans genocide. Now, I don't expect Republicans to feel any sympathy for the pain and suffering that they've inflicted on trans people because, quite frankly, that's the goal with these policies. I genuinely believe that Republicans want trans people to flee their states and ideally the country altogether. I truly believe that they actually want queer youth to commit suicide, and that when you tell them that that's what could result from their bigoted policies, they take it as affirmation that they're on the right path and don't see it as a warning like the rest of us normal people do, because they are fundamentally evil to their core. But I say all this to say that I expect this from Republicans. In theory, Democrats should know better, yet 8 Democrats joined fascist Republicans to support this legislation to endanger the lives of trans youth. HuffPost reports Democratic Representatives Henry Cuellar, Donald Davis, Cleo Fields, Laura Gillen, Vincent Gonzalez, Marcy Kaptur, Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, and Eugene Vindman all voted for this bill. What's more, 3 of those Democrats, Gillen, Gluesenkamp-Perez, and Vindman, are members of the Congressional Equality Caucus, which advocates for LGBTQ plus rights. What a fucking joke. Quote, "As a dad to 2 public school kids, I believe parents must be included in their children's decisions in school," Vindman said in a statement. Whether it's what they put on their school forms, their academic performance, or athletics, parents need to be at the center because that is the key to every child's success, he said. There are other policies in the bill I don't agree with and will work to change, but I voted today to make sure parents like me can continue to support their kids at school, and I believe to my core that this is what our kids need. What a load of horse shit. After this story was published, Gluesenkamp-Perez told HuffPost she voted for the bill because, as the parent of a young child, she doesn't believe parents should be cut out of the loop. "My heart breaks for children who don't feel safe letting their parents into their world. But divorcing a young child's school life from their home life doesn't resolve the underlying problem of an unsupportive family," she said in a statement. "It can leave that child more alone. I voted for this bill because I believe the answer is to bring families in, and I'll keep working so every kid in Southwest Washington has support both at school and at home." Representative Mark Takano, chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus and a 24-year educator, said the bill puts transgender youth at serious risk. He noted that 40% of homeless youth are LGBTQ+, and it's largely because they've been rejected by their families. Yeah, no fucking shit. But apparently these dumbass Democrats are assuming that Republicans have the best intent in the world and would never purposely harm at-risk youth because their bill is titled Stopping Indoctrination and Protecting Kids Act. That's actually what it's called. So I guess that they think that means it's altruistic. They actually want to protect kids. They apparently don't think it's suspicious at all that the party literally protecting elite pedophiles is purporting to want to protect kids. No red flags there. Nope. Except these Democrats know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Vindman is literally part of the Congressional Equality Caucus. Yet, he's feigning ignorance and pretending as if outing a child to a potentially abusive parent is no different than letting kids know that their kids didn't turn in their homework. Not the same fucking thing. But the worst is Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, who makes it clear that she actually knows this bill could harm trans youth. In fact, her heart breaks for them. But unfortunately for those kids, she's choosing for them to let their parents know, because divorcing a young child's school life from their home life doesn't resolve the underlying problem of an unsupportive family, according to her. Sure. But you know what it does do? It does buy them some time. It gives them the ability to come out when they're ready to, when it's safe, at a time when perhaps they're older and can financially support themselves in the event their parents toss them out of the home. It spares them abuse from conservative parents drunk on right-wing propaganda who would call them degenerates and force them to have humiliating conversations with their church's pastor and send them to conversion therapy or even beat them. But it's okay, though, because Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez has decided that all of this abuse is necessary because she thinks it's the best thing that we can do to bring families together, bring them in, and even if they're hostile towards their trans children and abuse them, well, fuck those kids. And she is a member of the Congressional Equality Caucus. It's like it's a sick joke. And it makes no sense from a political standpoint because not being bigoted, or at least not being as bigoted as Republicans, is the one selling point that Democrats have. Why else would anyone vote for a vapid, uninspiring conservative like Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez? To win the right to peel bananas in daycare? Because that's actually the kind of shit that she's focused on, as opposed to the real issues affecting voters in her district. And I promise you, dear viewer, I'm not making this up.
I want to tell a quick story about a bill I'm working on called the Banana Act. I was talking to a constituent who works in a daycare, and they told me they are not legally allowed to peel bananas or oranges for the kids. She said peeling fruit is considered food prep. But they can open a bag of chips. This seemed like a problem to me, so I started looking into it. For months, licensing officials and regulators told me, no. She just doesn't understand the rules. She must have misinterpreted the law. Her manager is lying to her. But I kept pushing and eventually confirmed that, yeah, she was right. They would have needed to install like 6 more sinks before they could legally serve fresh fruit. Even a simple bad policy like this can have huge ripple effects. So you guys know about my banana bill.
Hey, Congress lady, why can I legally open a bag of chips for the toddlers, but I can't peel a banana?
And I kept hearing that either this childcare worker was stupid, lying to me, their boss was lying to her, and they just no credence given at all.
And after digging and digging, I found out that it's considered food preparation.
They are being treated as if they are preparing sushi when they are trying to peel a banana.
This is not an issue just in my state. This is across the country.
I'm sure that hundreds of her constituents have come to her asking her for relief when it comes to medical debt and healthcare and the cost of living. But the one thing that caught her attention that she chose to hyperfixate on was the fucking banana claim. Why? Because it gives her a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, right? She can make it look like she's doing something even though she's doing nothing for her constituents. And when I say she's doing nothing, I want to emphasize she is quite literally not accomplishing anything with this banana bullshit. Come to find out, she was in fact wrong because Nathan J. Robinson looked into her claim and found absolutely no evidence to verify it as hard as he tried. He reached out to the relevant health department in Washington state and they emphatically stated that they do not have restrictions on peeling bananas, just basic common sense regulations you would expect pertaining to food prep, such as glove use, because of course you don't want to make the children sick. You want to make sure that they're at least washing their hands and wearing gloves to prepare food. But Nathan then asked her team for the specific regulation banning bananas, and the one that they provided did not actually do the thing they said that it did. It was more boilerplate expectations regarding food prep. In fact, Robinson says, quote, "There is nothing here about bags of chips being legal to serve, but the peeling of fruit being prohibited." And Nathan then asked her team how they interpreted that particular regulation to mean that daycare workers couldn't peel bananas. And they gave him this word salad response that didn't even address the substance of his question. And when Nathan spoke to a health official in Washington state, they confirmed that the opposite of what she's claiming is actually true. And the regulations supposedly restricting bananas in daycare actually require daycare providers to provide fresh fruits to children and prioritize that over processed foods. In other words, her entire pet project is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of a state regulation. But it hasn't stopped her from doubling and tripling down, because the point is not to allow daycare workers to peel bananas. They can already do that. The point is to demonize bureaucracy and state regulations at the behest of her corporate donors, who also don't like regulations because they'd much prefer to dump their toxic waste in our rivers and cut corners to save money. And her entire political project has been to reinforce the idea that big government is bad, because she is essentially a fucking Republican for all intents and purposes. And this anti-trans vote confirms that. And it is a betrayal. And if you want to be a Republican and do Republican things, you have to leave the Democratic Party. And if you're as pissed off about this as I am, here's the numbers to call their offices and let them know that this is not okay. Give them a call and politely tell them to either resign from Congress or switch parties. Because if they're going to team up with fascists to attack Republicans, then they have no business representing a party whose base depends on them not fucking oppressing trans people at the very minimum. Now, I'm going to call myself at the end of the video, but first, I just want to emphasize how important it is that we punish all of these traitors for this transphobic behavior. This shouldn't just get them kicked out of the Congressional Equality Caucus. It really should get them kicked out of the Democratic Party altogether, because if you can't even agree to the bare minimum, you have no business being in this party. Henry Cuellar, who also voted for this, is one of the last anti-abortion Democrats in the party, who was endorsed by Nancy Pelosi when she was the leader over his progressive primary challenger, Jessica Cisneros. So, I mean, it begs the question, if you're a Democrat and you're conservative on social issues, and also you're fiscally conservative, not to mention militaristic and pro-genocide, what are you? Because you're not a fucking Democrat, you're a Republican. And as much as I despise Donald Trump, I will say the one thing that he does that serves him well is he punishes traitors who get out of line. And Democrats really need to start doing that, at least a little bit. Because if they're going to allow this to continue, these centrists are going to drag the party down with them. If John Fetterman is going to endlessly critique the Democratic Party's base and glaze our fascist president, you need to strip him of his Democratic title. If Debbie Wasserman Schultz is going to attack Trump from the right for being too soft on Iran, you need to strip her of her Democratic title. If presidential hopefuls like Josh Shapiro say it's, quote, cynical to oppose AIPAC spending in Democratic primaries because I guess we don't actually care that they fund insurrectionist Republicans and support genocide, it's really because we're anti-Semitic. Like, if you are a Democrat who says this about the base you need to support you, then you need to strip him of his Democratic title. If you don't like the Democratic Party's base, you shouldn't be part of the Democratic Party. You're nothing without us. And if you can't do the bare minimum and oppose fascism and genocide, you need to get the fuck out of the party, because a tent that's too big will eventually collapse in on itself. We have no room for Republicans. We have no room for Diet MAGA. Now, that's not to say that ideological diversity is a negative. I'm not saying that. But the Democratic Party's umbrella has become too big. And the party has lost ideological coherence. It's become a refuge for fucking neocon rejects and anti-Trump Republicans, when we shouldn't be forced to accept the Republican Party's sloppy seconds. They should stay in the Republican Party and force them to moderate, and these dipshit Democrats should join them, because for too long, the Democratic Party has been moderating to accommodate Republican rejects as the party grows more and more extreme. You know, Republicans, they're just the party of Trump, so conservatives join Democrats in response. But that comes at a cost. The more the Democratic Party collectively shifts to the right to broaden their appeal to right-wingers, the more support they lose from the left. Conservative Democrats are watering down our party's ideology when they should be watering down the Republican Party's ideology and getting them to moderate, right? But at a minimum, all I'm fucking asking for is basic standards. We're not talking litmus tests. We're talking basic standards. Actually draw lines and punish Democrats for crossing those lines. Colorado's state Democratic Party is doing that as we speak. After their Democratic governor, Jared Polis, decided to commute the 9-year sentence of Trump ally Tina Peters, who's a literal election denier that tampered with voting machines, I'm not joking about that, the state Democratic Party decided to punish him by voting to censure him. And commuting the sentence of an insurrectionist was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. He also vetoed multiple bills from his party. He endorsed RFK Jr. to be HHS secretary, seriously, and he's going above and beyond to collaborate with ICE even against the advice of his own judges. And Democratic voters were basically like, what the fuck? Did we vote for a Democrat or a Republican? Because what even is this? And even though censoring him isn't going to do much aside from piss him off, it was necessary because the state Democratic Party in Colorado needed to show voters that they don't condone this behavior. And that goes a long way because you're only as strong as your weakest member. And if you don't distance yourself from that traitor behavior, you're going to damage the brand. But for too long, establishment Democrats have tried to distance themselves from the left and progressives, even though we're the ones who've actually captured the heart and soul of the Democratic Party's base. And if a progressive ever wins a presidential primary in this country and takes control of the Democratic Party apparatus, they need to fucking clean house. Because there's a significant portion of Democrats who are holding the party back because they benefit from the status quo. And when I say they're holding the party back, I mean they're holding the party back on purpose because they benefit from the status quo. They stand nothing to gain and everything to lose if we change the status quo for the better. And that's an uncomfortable fact that a lot of people haven't really come to terms with, but I want to share a TikTok from Imani Barbarin who explains it perfectly.
If the oppression that the Republican Party inflicted upon the American people did not exist, neither would the Democratic Party. As it stands right now, the oppression, the racism, and the hatred that Republicans utilize in office is the greatest asset that the Democratic Party has into regaining power and their placement in higher offices. That's no joke. You can literally hear people saying that. Very rarely will you actually hear anybody talking about the things that they're excited about the Democratic Party doing. Or at the very least, because I know, oh my God, they don't have the majority, they can't do anything, da da da. Whatever. Let's talk about proposals. Very rarely can you hear anybody talking about anything that they're excited about the Democratic Party proposing to even do. You don't need to actually have power or be in office to be excited about policy ideas that are integrated into your platform. Those are promises to begin with. We don't expect them right now. But very rarely do you hear that at all regardless. Oppression is the greatest lever that they can use to gain power. And it is also why this DNC report, this autopsy of the 2024 election, they weren't expecting to have so many people up in arms wanting to actually see it. Because if oppression is your reason for wanting to get into office, then when you lose, oppression is just the default of why you lost. Because by any other metric, it doesn't make sense for a party whose entire base is made up of people who have experienced 400 years of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, all of these isms. It makes no sense to then task those people with being the ones and the representatives of the ones to undo those systems of bias for an election every 4 years. And if they actually cared about that, they would actually propose more economic policies that undergirded the cultural changes they actually want to see stick. It's not just that they're hoping to win by default. They're hoping to win according to the oppression that the Republicans can inflict.
And to be clear, I don't think this is true for all Democrats. I think some genuinely do want to change the country for the better. But is it true for most Democrats? Yeah, I think it is. What else would these Democrats who stand for nothing do without the Republicans oppressing us? Nobody votes for Democrats because they're excited about their policy platform. I don't even know what they stand for. People vote for Democrats because they're not as cruel to marginalized people. They're less likely to throw marginalized people into blenders, like Republicans, or so we thought, right? But I, for one, am sick of this bullshit. I am so fucking sick of this. The reason why Republicans have to kowtow to Donald Trump, Republican lawmakers, that is because They know that that's what the base wants. And it's time for us to flex our political muscles as well. It's time for us to drive these blue dog dinos out of the fucking party by making them feel unwelcome. And on that note, I am going to call one of these 8 Democrats. I've decided on Marie glue-sniffing internment camp Perez because, we talked about her the most in this video, so why not? Her number is 202 225 3536. This is her DC office number.
Hi, you've reached the office of Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez. We're sorry to have missed your call. Our Washington, D.C. office
It didn't even ring.
From 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time while in session, and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time during district work periods. Our Vancouver, Washington office is open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Please leave your name, contact information, home address, and a brief message, and we will get back to you.
Hi, this message is for Congresswoman Gluesenkamp-Perez. I just wanted to call and urge her to resign from the Congressional Equality Caucus after she voted with fascist Republicans to endanger the lives of trans youth. Because if you're not going to do the bare minimum and protect trans youth, then I don't know why you're in the caucus that is supposed to be protecting LGBTQ plus people. And quite frankly, I don't know why you're a Democrat if you are trying to demonize big government with fake regulations like banana ban peels or whatever. Like, I don't know why you don't just join the Republican Party. What is the point if you get in office and you don't listen to your constituents, you don't listen to the Democratic base, you spit in their faces by voting with fascist Republicans to out trans kids to their parents? That subjects them to abuse and homelessness, and you voted for that as a Democrat. What is wrong with you? That is disgraceful. You should resign from the Equality Caucus. And quite frankly, we don't need you in Congress. Just go become a lobbyist already. We know that that's what you're going to do. There's no point to you keeping that seat warm for nothing. You might as well let somebody who actually wants to represent the constituents of that district in. So, yeah, thanks for nothing. Resign. Embarrassing. Shame on you. I had to stop myself because sometimes I'll keep going. But yeah, you don't have to say exactly what I said. Just don't be rude. If they pick up, you're going to talk to a staffer. They're not responsible for what the idiot that they represent does. But just tell them that what they're doing is unacceptable. Be polite, but direct, because this is not okay. So I think that the quicker we all reinforce this idea that you have to kowtow to the Democratic Party base, the better off we will all be. Because like it or not, we are their bosses. And it's time that we actually start to crack down and be shitty bosses, because we've let them get away with so much shit for too long, and it's time we start to really draw some hard lines in the sand and let it be known that this isn't okay.
Mom, I'm gay. Gays. Gays. Mom, I'm transgender.